Hello, we are Group 4 and we will be presenting our group project on the Greek myth of Hephaestus. In this presentation, we will cover the overview and story of Hephaestus, explore the culture of ancient Greece, talk about the myth itself, and lastly, cover the impact on culture and lessons that can be learned regarding our myth. This video is done by Tatum Highlands, Jack Dyer, Braden Bennett, Kylie McMullen, and Kimberly Velasco. I hope you enjoy.
The Greek myth that we chose to talk about was the Greek myth of Hephaestus. And Hephaestus is the Olympian god of fire, smiths, craftsmen, metalworking, stonemasonry, and sculpture. And he is recognized as one of the 12 Olympian gods. And according to some, his parents are Zeus and Hera, Zeus is the supreme god of Greek pantheon, and Hera is the goddess of marriage and women, and she is the wife and sister of Zeus. So the story of Hephaestus, there's a few accounts, some different stories, but there's a more popular one, I guess you could say. So one of the stories is others say he is the son of Hera alone through parthenogenesis, which basically means virgin origin. Offspring developed from unfertilized eggs. That's how Hera was able to have him and have him alone. And she did that because she was angry with Zeus because he formed Athena from his mind, which is another one of the Greek gods. But one of the popular story is that Hephaestus was born with a deformity in his foot. He had a withered foot, and Hera did not like that because he had to be perfect because he was an Olympian god. So she basically threw him from heaven, and his time away from heaven, he worked a lot on his craft skills and all his metalworking and everything. He was actually brought back to heaven. And because of how well his skills were in craftsmanship, and he was the only Olympian who was allowed to be ejected from heaven and to come back. And because of all his skills, he did all the metal work and everything for the gods. He made their armor and all their weapons.
Where does this culture come from? This myth comes from ancient Greece, which is a civilization in southeastern Europe. If you look at the map here, you can see it's surrounded by the Aegean Sea, the Ionian Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. This culture developed around 800 BCE and went to 146 BCE when Rome took control. It wasn't just one country like today. It was made up of multiple city-states such as Athens and Sparta, and each one had its own government, an army, and traditions. Ancient Greece is famous for the first democracy, as well as their advances in art, architecture, and theater, and as well as their Olympic Games.
Hi, my name is Kylie McMullen, and to be moving on, I'll be talking about the ancient Greek culture. Ancient Greece existed from around 800 BCE to 146 BCE. It was known to be a very powerful civilization due to its artistic achievements, architecture, mythology, and of course, their creation of the Olympic Games. The Greeks believed that a large family of gods and goddesses lived on Mount Olympus and had power over all aspects of their lives and nature. They believed that the gods controlled love, war, and weather. Because of this, religion was a major aspect of everyday life. People showed their respect and tried to gain favor from the gods by offering animal sacrifices, celebrating festivals, and building temples in their honor. Hephaestus was important because the Greeks relied on weapons and armor for defense and conquest, so they respected craftsmanship and metalwork. Lastly, he was admired for his skill, showing that talent and hard work were as valuable as physical beauty or strength. Thank you.
What is this myth telling us? The myth of Hephaestus tells us that fire isn't just a destructive force, it is also something that can make progress possible, and it can help build civilizations. And as a blacksmith, Hephaestus uses fire to forge armor, weapons, and many useful tools. And his workshop on Mount Olympus was actually known as the heart of innovation. And even though he was cast out of heaven and physically disabled, Festus rose back up through his own resilience. And this story teaches that true power doesn't come from someone's brute strength or their beauty, but rather their ability to transform raw materials into something even greater. And it reframes fire as a creative and productive force, is something that can build society rather than just tearing it down. How does this impact the culture that it comes from? In ancient Greek culture, this myth helped define how people viewed fire, not just as something to fear, but as something to master. Hephaestus elevated the role of an artisan because he was one of the only gods who actually worked. This story gave dignity and respect to certain professions, especially those that were involved with that where labor was involved, such as metalworking, pottery, and construction. And you could see his influence in how much Greek society valued builders and architects and inventors. Fire was something that was very central to city life. It was used in forges, kilns, and even symbolic flames in temples. So the cultural impact of Hephaestus' myth is the idea that fire is essential for human advancement, and when it is guided by skill, patience, and purpose.
What do we learn from the Greek myth of Hephaestus? One of the lessons is resilience in the face of rejection. So what exactly does that mean in reference to his story? As mentioned earlier, we are told that he is rejected by his own mother, Hera, and thrown from heaven solely based on his deformities and appearance. However, Hephaestus did not let that stop him from being an incredible craftsman. We can learn from his story that the opinions of others do not define us nor our capabilities. We can also learn from his story that there is so much value in learning a skill or craft. Hephaestus was able to prove himself of being worthy as a god by showing others his usefulness through his ability to create weapons and armor. We can learn from his actions that being skilled at something can earn you recognition from others. It can also earn you respect through team contribution. Hephaestus' story also teaches that physical imperfections shouldn't be limitations. Hephaestus' skill outshined the fact that he was physically disabled. He didn't let his disability and appearance stop him from developing his craftsmanship skills. Hephaestus should be used as an example for others who are disabled to let them know that they are just as capable of achieving their dreams as an able-bodied person. Finally, the last lesson his story teaches is justice and cleverness. It is believed that he built a chair with a secret mechanism to trap his mother in order to punish her for rejecting him. He didn't resort to violence and instead used his genius to create the trap. We can take 2 lessons from this incident. It's just as important to stand up for yourself when you're being mistreated, and the classic ideology of it's better to work smarter, not harder. And these are our references. Thank you for listening to our presentation.